We are trying to get a file that we've restored from our QIC tapes to run on an emulator. We're restoring files that we believe are from a Microtech Dart or similar machine. The common denominator that we're going to identify is going to be that we believe that this is similar enough to a 0.4 machine from the early 80s. EDS, or Educational Data Systems, produced the 0.4, or became the 0.4 corporation, and we believe that this machine is a version of that. But we're documenting everything about the restoration of this machine from the QIC tapes on our site at microtechm1.blogspot.com. microtechm1.blogspot.com. So we've been in contact with Bruce Ray from novasareforever.org. The 0.4 is similar to the Data General Nova, but was a faster processor. Was actually built as an improvement to in the late 70s and early 80s. We have plenty of history on that if you're interested in the history section here, as well as in the 0.4 section here on our site. But what this video is about is our attempts to actually reproduce what Bruce has done for us, so that we can analyze it more deeply and understand exactly what's going on by playing with the tools ourselves. So what we've done is we've extracted a file from one of these tapes. It's a file called the Minicom Disk-to-Tape Utility, and we have a page for that here on our site called Minicom Disk-to-Tape Utility Tells a Story. And this is where we document where Bruce has taken the file that we extracted from our QIC cartridges and actually run it on one of his emulators called ReNOVAte. And you can read more about that on this particular page for background information. What we want to do here is identify the differences between what Bruce has shown us that he's done on ReNOVAte in his screenshots and what we're able to do using a demo version of ReNOVAte that Bruce has very graciously given us a product key for. So let's look at these differences. We want to start with this screenshot right here, where this is an example where Bruce, on his own emulator, on his own computer, running ReNOVAte, this version right here, whoops, was able to actually use these commands right here and actually get the Minicom Disk-to-Tape utility, copy utility, to run on this emulator. So we're just trying to reproduce what he's done here with this demo version. So there's a number of things that we don't understand that we would like the community's help in understanding. So let's actually run the comparison. First, we're going to start by comparing these versions. The demo version that we obtained is version 4.0b.06. The version that Bruce was using is version 4.2b.22. I don't know how much that plays a part. That version difference plays a part in the differences that we're seeing in the commands here. I'm also noticing that we have these numbers here under System Startup that are different. I believe that these are probably some kind of log output without any labels, where Bruce probably knows exactly what they are because he designed this, but we don't necessarily know. Some numbers are the same, and some numbers are different. We have 0004 here, 4 zeros, so on and so forth. And you can make these comparisons in the event that you have any understanding what these things mean. Before I go too much further, I want to point out where the manual is for the ReNOVAte emulator. And we've linked that manual on our page right here. See the ReNOVAte Manual right here on this particular page. Minicom Disk to Tape Utility tells a story. See the ReNOVAte Manual right here. And so this actually brings up a PDF of the ReNOVAte Manual. Now this is a 159-page manual, and I've been using this to try to find some explanation as to what these commands mean. So I'm still in that process, and anything that any of you can find that might help would be much appreciated. So let's move on here. So the first thing that Bruce does here is a set DZP model 6060. So we're going to do that same thing. Just line these things up right here. Okay. Error. Command device or unit DZP is not valid. So this is about as far as we've gotten. So there must have been something that in the configuration settings for Bruce's setup of ReNOVAte that defined or created DZP as some kind of object. That's what I'm guessing so far based on what little I know about this, but just in my very limited playing with emulators, which has been extremely limited. So I'm definitely a newbie when it would come to this type of thing. So device or unit DZP is not valid. So it implies that the device or unit DZP has not been created. So now the question is, how do we create the device or the unit that that we're trying to set here, named DZP, with these parameters, model 6060? I don't know the answer to that question. I have been trying to figure this out in the ReNOVAte manual, and I haven't been able to find anything yet. The closest that I could come is, let me get to that. So here's a clue. I was looking at the ReNOVAte.ini and the ReNOVAte.vc files that that this is running. Right, so it says processing initialization file ReNOVAte.ini and command file ReNOVAte.vc. So I thought, well, maybe the contents of this file creates that object. And it looks very close. Here we are enabling the devices we want to support. So we see device enable, TTI, TTO, RCT. These appear to be displays, printer, LPT. This appears to be a disk of some kind. Device enable DKP. So I thought, well, that's very similar to DZP, which is what I'm working with. So what if we enable that device, DZP, and see what happens? So I haven't tried this yet. Let's see what that does. So I'm going to file and save this, and now I'm going to jump back to the ReNOVAte program here. I'm going to quit, and now I'm going to start it up again. How do I do that? Well, I go to my folder here, which has the program files, and I guess I just double-click ReNOVAte.exe. Yep, there we go. Oh, look at this. Something different. Oops, could not find device DZP. Did you see that error? So that means that there's more work to be done here. But you know, maybe I'm on the right track, so I'll just keep looking here and see what I come up with. Alright, since that's produced an error, I've taken that out now, and I'll restart ReNOVAte. Good. Now, something else that I've noticed is that we're not dealing with DZP like we show here, but we are dealing with DKP in the ReNOVAte.vc file, as well as its device enable DKP. Now, I don't understand why it doesn't recognize DZP yet. Maybe it needs to be defined somewhere else, or there needs to be some kind of resource file for it. I'm just guessing. But let's try then. I think the next logical step would be to try working with DKP instead of DZP, since it seems that exists already because it hasn't errored out on these. The INI file and the VC file both are working with DKP. It's enabling DKP here and setting DKP with various parameters over here. So let's try doing that exact same thing with DKP instead of DZP. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, so here we are, and I'm going to set DKP model 6060. Well, this is interesting. Error, invalid or ambiguous register name model. Error, model not found, or conversion error 6060. So it's possible now, this is what my instinct tells me from what little I know about this, that maybe model is recognized as a recognized register name or something in version 4.2b.22, where it's not recognized in version 4.0b.06, or maybe it's defined somewhere when Bruce is running it. I don't know. Or maybe it's an alias that's defined somewhere in a third-party file. So deeper hunting is needed, and maybe you could help with that. And a quick search for register name in the ReNOVAte Manual PDF shows one instance of that phrase, register name, on page PDF 89, manual page. Oh, hang on here. Manual page 75. And it's in the section Extended Commands. For convenience, the extended commands may be abbreviated in most cases. That is, a show history command may be abbreviated as SHHI. An error message will be displayed if the command specified is ambiguous. Device or unit names may not be abbreviated, but register names may. Alright, so maybe this is a clue. Let me think on this a little bit longer. So more thoughts on exactly what Model 6060 might mean here. Model 6060. You might want to figure out what Bruce was going for when he set the DZP Model 6060. What was he trying to target? Well, he tells me in a narrative here where he says the disk controller appears to use the standard DG or Data General Zebra controller, Model 6060, 6061, and 6067 programming model. However, it assumes a non-standard disk geometry of 16 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors. And so Bruce puts in some parameters here: sectors 32, heads 5, cylinders 442. So all of these things seem to be related. What he's trying to say is set this thing to have the same parameters as the Data General Zebra Model 6060 or equivalent. But I probably need to study up on more about what those parameters are and figure out how to set those parameters in more rudimentary ways, such as NDN, seek bits, read 0, and maybe there's more parameters here that this system can accept that is going to define it correctly to be in line with the parameters of models of the Data General Zebra Model 6060. That's what I'm coming up with so far. Now let me see if I can figure out what he says: 16 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors. Over here he says 32 heads, 5 cylinders, and 32 sectors, 5 heads, and 442 cylinders. So is that math the same? Let's think about that for a moment and compute. So let's analyze this a little further. What Bruce says in the text, 16 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors, is slightly different than what we see in his command line. In his command line, we see set DKP sectors, 32 heads, 5 cylinders, 442. In his text, he says 16 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors. So maybe that's the same as set DKP sectors, 32 heads, 5, and cylinders, 16. I just rearranged this information so I could put it all in a universal, a matching format, a matching layout, consistent layout. That's what I'm looking for. Now, we know that model errors out, right? So set DCP model 6060, enable DCP. Let's go back to where I was, which is this window up, then this window up, then this window up. All right. So set enable. We enabled DKP. DKP is already enabled. Okay. Well, let's try the next command that Bruce provided, which was set DKP sectors. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And it doesn't error out, which is a good sign. So evidently it likes this command. DKP is already enabled. And I don't know what model it's set at. The best I could tell is over here in the ReNOVAte.vc, we have some comments that say set up the 4047 Diablo 31 disk. I'm not sure if that means Diablo. I did some research on that, and that's there is a Diablo was a company that made a 31 series disk. Anyway, there's these things here which seem to set up the parameters for the DKP disk. Indian 1, seek bits 0x7800, and read 0 is true. And then he does something familiar, attach DKP:0, double space dp0.raw. That seems to be very similar to what we see over here, further on down. Attach DZP0 space DZP0.raw. So evidently this is something that's already happened, in the ReNOVAte.vc that was run on mine, right? Run here, processing command file ReNOVAte.vc. So these things have already been run. So these are the parameters for the DKP disk. I don't know what other things the Zebra Model 6060 has that the 4047 Diablo 31 disk doesn't have, or vice versa. But at least this works, right? The DKP, it's recognizing this as a valid drive. I don't know how to get it to recognize the Zebra Model 6060 as a valid drive yet, but we're still working on this. Any ideas you guys have is very, very much appreciated. So let's see, what's next? Where does this leave us? We've done some experiments here. I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back to this file here, this one here, and I wanted to say, well, maybe we could set up, maybe we could set this the same as Bruce says in his text, 16 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors for the DG Zebra. So, maybe he recognized that after the screenshot. I don't know. I'm kind of left to guess here without knowing any more. So let's try that. So I'll just copy this, and then we'll go over here and paste. And it seems to think that's okay too. So maybe that's how I've set this up. Great. So let's move on and see what happens, I guess, because we don't really know much else, but we could learn more by going on and see if we get any errors. A little bit further below, Bruce goes on to actually talk a little bit more about this. So he was talking about, it assumes a non-standard disk geometry of 16 cylinders, 5 head, and 32 sectors. A little further down, he says, dissecting and running the utility reveals further program assumptions. The 40 megabyte disk drive has a geometry of 442 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors per track. So here now we're talking about 442 cylinders. to make up the entire 40 megabyte disk drive. And then he goes on to say that the iris logical unit to physical disk address assignments are here, and we have 5 logical units to make up the entire disk backup, numbered 0 through 4. LUN stands for logical unit, or partition. The modern phrase we would use today is called partition, but for whatever reason, the nomenclature back then for this type of machine was a logical unit. Okay, so, and also we can see that the cylinders now go from 0 all the way to 441 for a total of 442 cylinders. And of course, the thing is here, when you start counting, do you start counting with 0 or 1? That's always the things that programmers and technical architects need to think about. In this case, of course, we're starting with 0, which means instead of it going from 1 to 442, it goes from 0 to 441, but it's the same quantity of cylinders, which is 442. So that makes sense to me that he's identified 442 cylinders, 5 heads, and 32 sectors per track, which matches what he's put here. Sectors 32, heads 5, and cylinders 442. So I would say let's go back to this and set it back and forth. So I guess we've just reset the parameters there. We shall see. What should we do next? So now I've moved on, and I wanted to just go to the MTA section. I'm assuming that DKP is taking the place of DZP, which now brings us to this section right here. The MTA section. Set MTA, enable MTA, attach MTA. So I've done that now. And set MTA, write log false was fine. Enable MTA was great. But attach MTA:0, MTA 0.9 TRK, error, the file does not exist. So now I know I have to maybe create some kind of file for the 9-track tape device, or the 9-track tape object. I guess it's a device, MTA 0.9 track. So let's see if I can find anything about that in the manual. And here on the bottom of page 52, I do find MTA device, specify the exact magnetic tape device code. This should be a decimal number in the range of 0 to 63. The default is 022, octal 18 decimal. The standard secondary device is 062. So let's see what Bruce says about what this program calls for under his expert eye. So we'll go back here to the page on my site where I quote Bruce about this. All right, so he says the utility assumes 2 devices exist. A tape controller using device code 022 and a disk controller using device 027. Now I think we've discovered that if we go back to the disk, that the DKP is a different device. I think yes, okay, so this is telling me when I try to enable DKP, which is already enabled, it gives me an error. Device DKP is already enabled, but looks at it, it assigns a number 033 to it. So it looks like we want a disk that's a disk controller using device 027 and the magnetic tape using device code 022. So let's see if I can figure out how to set that up. Okay, I have an idea. Enable. Whoops. I've already enabled MTA, so it should give me some kind of error. Yes. Error. Device MTA 022 is already enabled. Well, that's actually very good news because it assumes that a tape controller using device 022 already exists. It looks like I'm going to have to create a controller device using device code 027, though. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that. So I'm going to jump back to the ReNOVAte.ini and see if this means anything. See if I can find anything here where at least DKP is specified. Now, I'm looking up the device enable, and I noticed something here. The device enable here
says specify the device names and or numbers that are to be disabled when the system is started. To me, that sounds like a typo where maybe this line here was copied. Device disable says specify the device names and or numbers that are to be disabled when the system is started. I think that's just an error in the manual. Logic tells me that this should be enabled, and then it lists the syntax. The list of device names and numbers may be separated with so many characters. So, but the list of device names also implies that they need to be created somewhere else. So where else do they need to be created? Let's see if I can figure that out. And at least now I've discovered show all, which shows all of shows information about all enabled devices. I found that on the manual on page 77, which is around here somewhere. Yep. Show all. Here on page 77, PDF page 91, manual page 77. Okay. So I did that. Let's look at what we see here, see if it's meaningful. TTI, not so concerned about this. PTR, RTC, LPT, MTA, which I think I did. DKP, device 33. PIT, I don't know what that is. TT, sounds like display, FPU, and CPU. All right, well now I need to learn how what these things mean. Hey, I found DZP right here in the manual in the table of contents. I wonder why my text search did not find this here in the PDF. All right, well, maybe I didn't look. So this is a DZP is a new moving head disk. So this is an additional peripheral device that's supported. Now, how on earth do we use it? All of these supported DG devices may be directed to the devices and files of the underlying operating system. Additional device drivers may be created on a custom basis to meet the most demanding application requirement. Well, thankfully, DZP, it looks like it already exists somehow, so I guess I just haven't turned it on. And on the following page, here's a nice diagram. Page 6, PDF page 20. Manual page 6, the major peripherals supported. Great. All right, so it looks like I need to do something like this in the INI. Negative or minus DZP device set to the integer. And what did Bruce say? Default is 027? This says the default is 027, so let's see what he said over here. Yeah, the utility assumes two devices exist, a tape controller on 22 and a disk controller using device code 027. So now let's see what we can do here. Let's close this and let's edit the ReNOVAte INI file to contain this. Now, if that's just an integer, I wonder. I mean, default is 027. What does this mean? So I don't need to specify anything there, right? That would be crazy. Okay, so I put in DZP device equals 027. I have no idea if that's going to work or not, or even if it's in the right order, but we'll see. And I don't know, maybe should this be before? And then I need to enable it? See, what I wonder is, why does DKP not have this thing? Right? So now maybe I do this, DZP. Let's see how this works. File save, and let's go to launch ReNOVAte. Uh-oh, fatal system error. Alright, so at least this, oh, now it disappeared. Alright, so the fatal system error is DZP device. It doesn't know what this is, and so it dies. So if it doesn't know what it is, that might have gotten the syntax wrong. DZP device integer. So maybe I don't need the blanks, or the brackets. Let's try it without the bracket. Okay, file save, and launch ReNOVAte. It doesn't like it even with the brackets either, without the brackets. So I wonder how that works. Alright, so now I'm going to take this out and try it in the console instead, see if that is better. So let's put this back the way it was. Let's launch ReNOVAte. Not rename it, just launch it. Okay, good. So it doesn't know that command. Well, it doesn't know that command either. Alright, now I gotta think. Alright, well, what I've done is I've scrolled to the top of the command line options section that says the default option is command line options in alphabetical order. The default option value is specified where applicable. This displays a summary of the command line options. Great! So, I just did that here. And let's look at this. Okay, hit space to continue. Extended commands. Look, there's more. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so hit space to continue. And there's more. Okay, so I guess I'll just keep hitting space to see all of this. Ah, there it is. Okay, so here's a full screen of commands. So let me read this for a while. Alright, let's try DCP Debug. So I'm going to copy and paste this into the INI file. We'll see what happens. So Boolean is pretty straightforward. True. Let's try that. See if that actually will run. Ah! Well, it didn't choke, which is good. Let's see if it's now a device. See, it's not there. So the device is not enabled, which is very strange. So I must be doing something out of order. See if I can figure out what it is. So let's try this. The default, when setting the DCP device equals, well, the default is 27, but that's an octal. So if that's 23 in decimal, you know, I'm not sure if an integer means decimal, but in my brain it certainly does. So let's try 23 instead of 27, see if it's expecting a decimal value there instead of an octal value. Okay, so we'll try this then. What is it, 23 decimal? So let's see if that works. File save. And we will kill this. Just close the window. And then run this again. Okay, it doesn't like that. Fail system error. DCP device equals 23. It does not like that at all. So what on earth am I doing? How do I create this thing? How do I make the device exist? Alright, so let's try this one. DCP disk util. File used by the disk controller in the iris bits disk util format. Well, maybe that's what I need. So that's a Boolean, so let's try setting that as true. So it doesn't like the device. Okay. Now we'll run this. Doesn't like DCP disk util equals true. Fatal operating system error. Interesting. But it has no problem with DCP debug. If we put that first, right? It doesn't error out on that. Let's see. No, it doesn't error out on that. It still says disk util equals true. So what on earth am I doing wrong? So is a Boolean 0, 1 instead of true, false? I don't have any syntax examples here with this. Well, or do I? Let me do a search. And so I'm going to take a break from trying to play with ReNOVAte. Maybe somebody who's watching this has an idea. And now I'm going to go over and play with the Nova simulator on SimH, the Nova SimH simulator. And I believe I have there's a number of fantastic resources to show me how to do something with that. Although the complexity of what I'm trying still eludes me. So I'll play with that for a while and maybe add a new video. But if anyone has any ideas as to how to accomplish this, I think, accomplish this same task with SimH. That's one of my goals. To do this either with ReNOVAte or SimH, but just to recreate what Bruce has done there. So this is the kind of thing I'll be playing with. I found Wayne Conrad's blog about learning the data general Nova with SimH, and I find it to be very comprehensive. This actually is much easier to read. His explanations are very, very helpful on this, but they do not address some of the more advanced things like creating the alternative device that's necessary with the correct numbers, with the correct octal address numbers to match what Bruce has done here. So if anyone has any ideas how to translate this over, I'd love to hear from it, and I'll be publishing more videos and answering questions. Really appreciate you watching. Thanks.